Hi, my name is Emily Luscombe, and I'm the environmental coordinator for the Washoe tribe of Nevada and California. And I have many years of experience working with stream bank restoration projects, riparian restoration, overall ecological restoration, and floodplain protection. I worked primarily in Northern California, so this is my first time working in Nevada, and we'll be working on a project on the East Fork of the Carson River.
And my name is Loren Secor. I am an environmental specialist too with the Washoe Environmental Protection Department. I have a bit of experience working with restoration projects on the Carson River, and that was mostly through the Carson Water Sub-Conservancy District. So today we are presenting on the Watashemu East Fork Carson River Bank Stabilization and Restoration Project. Watashemu is the Washoe word for the Carson River, and we wanted to include it to again recognize the river as a place of past and present significance to Washoe culture.
I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the project location. This is an area that has been damaged over time by undercutting and flooding events, and there's a large problem with the soil in this area in terms of soil cohesion, which is what makes this a more significant impact when these flooding events occur. When you look at this picture here where the cursor is, you can see that this is a very high fine content soil, and then there's large cobble within that. So the soil cohesion is extremely low and relies on capillary action and vegetation. The capillary action has been reduced because, as you can see, this is where the channel originally was here, and the orange line is phase 1 of the project area. Phase 2 is up here around the bend. And the channel has moved after the last flood and straightened and moved away from this. So it will still come in here during flood events and cause undercutting, but there's very little capillary action holding that soil together now that the primary channel has moved. And so this is an issue in terms of finding ways to stabilize this so that it doesn't wash out when we do work in a flood event. And then this area up here is ranch area. This is the tribal ranch, so this is cattle grazing that goes up to the river area. On the other side, this is housing that does not belong to the tribe. And there's an armored bank that's put in here that has straightened it. So this puts the channel into sort of an unnatural confined channel on this side where there's not a lot that we can do with it.
So to just go into a little bit of history on this particular project area, it's long been an area of restoration interest, again, due to those hydro modifications on the western side and the resulting bank degradation on the opposite side on tribal lands. So in 2016, the tribe was awarded EPA Clean Water Act 319 funding to help stabilize the eroding riverbank. Cardno Inc. Consulting did a thorough design plan for the restoration, but unfortunately during the winter of 2016-2017, there was significant flooding and the main river channel actually migrated west, as you can see in the before and after aerials there. This reduced the constant erosion on the east bank and made the original project design unusable. And to help stabilize the bank in that area and create more riparian habitat, the tribe additionally worked in 2018 to revegetate the area with some native plants.
This site is a high priority area for restoration. As we discussed before, the area up above on the bank is agricultural and is being used for ranching. This is a site that has a high input for non-point source pollution through siltation, and the water quality is degraded due to the fact that this is high fine soil, so the turbidity becomes high. There's channel siltation that occurs as this erodes, and there's a potential for increased nutrient loading because of those agricultural soils. And there are other potential impacts from the agricultural soils, including the fact that we do treat the area up above with pesticides because of an invasive species issue. There's reduced access for the river to get to its historic floodplain due to the increased channelization and the loss of the natural flow patterns, as we discussed with that armored bank. And there's a land loss that's impacting the tribal agricultural and ranching operations because this has been cutting in on one side only due to the armoring on the other bank, and the river has lost its natural meander. It's just cutting into tribal property. There's a habitat loss that has occurred here, and this is because the vegetation has been washed out and there's not regular vegetation or a natural bank on the other side. And so this gets rid of important riparian plants and wildlife, but it's also reduced species that are culturally important to the tribe. And this project fits into a larger vision that the tribe has to restore the Carson River to a more natural state and improve the ecosystem function, because this is a section of the river that has been extremely hydromodified with bank armorings, impoundments, small dams. There's a fish hatchery to try and assist with some of the dam issues, but it is not in a natural state, and therefore it needs some conductivity between areas in terms of habitat, so that there can be more thriving, vibrant ecosystem.
One of the unique challenges with this restoration are the various historic hydromodifications. These include a channel incision that removes the river's natural access to its floodplain, the straightening of natural meanders that increases river velocity and erosive power, as well as the rock wall armoring and increased elevation of the opposing upstream bank. All these factors have contributed to reduce native species diversity in the area, resulted in stream bank degradation, and led to an overall reduction in habitat quality. So this restoration project would not only improve river habitat and non-point source pollution, but also restore natural ecosystem function, which provides many benefits such as flood mitigation, improved downstream water quality, and enhanced riparian habitat for culturally significant plants and animals.
So there are a number of different restoration methods that we're intending to use on this site in order to bring it back to a more natural state and improve that ecosystem function. And the phase 2 area that we had looked at before in the upstream area, that's going to be the area where we will be looking back at laying back sections of the bank. And this is going to be done with a 2-to-1 slope so that the channel can regain access to the natural floodplain, which is going to be over in that agricultural land that we looked at, and that will help prevent flooding of the houses and the development on the other side if it goes over the rock wall, because this will give it more area to flood too. And this area already has some terracing that's involved in the bank that will make it easier to lay back the bank and more natural. And this has the stream bank already, the stream channel already up against the bank. So it will be an easier area to bring the floodwaters over with. So that will be for the upstream portion. And then when we look at phase 1, the downstream portion, there's going to be the same methods used as the upstream portion, plus some additional methods in the upstream. So downstream and upstream will be extensive use of revegetation of the upland and in channel areas with the diversity of native plants to help stabilize the soils and restore ecosystem function. So we're going to be looking especially at the plants like the willows and things that have a very strong root system that will help to stabilize that soil and help to keep the bank from eroding further. This will be more extensively used in the downstream portion, but in the upstream portion, it will also be used to still anchor in and hold that new 2-to-1 slope. There'll be an extensive use of a wide variety of bioengineering methods. One of those methods that will be most commonly employed is the use of anchoring large woody debris. There will be some limited use of 1/4 and 1/2 ton riprap that's going to be strategically placed, and it will help anchor vegetation and large woody debris to prevent destabilization during the flood events. Now, this is not going to be like the rock wall armoring on the other side. This is going to be very select use specifically for anchoring in order to help maintain a more natural flow and a more natural habitat. And so we can see here with the design elements that the large woody debris is going to be used to slow the river velocity. It's going to deflect water from the bank, and it's going to protect the anchoring vegetation as well as these anchoring areas of large woody debris. And this allows everything to become established and for the vegetation to gain those deep roots that will help anchor it in the long term. The area of the riverbank that's being worked on in phase 1 bends away from the stream channel, as you can see here. So this is where it comes in upstream to downstream, and you can see that that becomes quickly eroded in a storm surge, and the eddies come in there and it undercuts the bank. So these are going to be used. These are kind of triangular in shape, and you can see here where the riprap is used on the edge to help anchor them in. And when the water is first coming into the area, they'll be angled away to kind of push some of the water away from the bank, helping with that deflection. And then as we have these ones here that are more in the middle of the bend, those will be alternating in direction to break up the flow and velocity and try and help keep the water away from the bank. And then as we get to the end, it'll be angled away from the bank and back into the main channel to help that water flow smoothly away without undercutting any further sections of the bank.
So looking at some hydrologic models will help us to see how restoration would improve river access to the floodplain. This is a model that was completed by Cardno for the 2016 design plans, and it essentially shows flood severity with different scenarios. The dark purple is obviously the primary river channel with year-round flow, while the darker blue is predicted inundation during a 25-year flood event, and the lighter blue is the inundation during a extreme 100-year event. Um, and the light purple lines towards the outside edges of the map, those indicate the FEMA flood insurance boundaries. Uh, so this restoration project would allow the river much improved access to its natural floodplain to the east over that tribal agricultural land that we had mentioned earlier. And this would help take some of the pressure off of those developments on the west side of the river that may experience some flooding during more extreme flood events when the river can crest that berm and rock wall armoring. And allowing the river to spread out over the floodplain to the east would additionally help reduce downstream flood severity in those more densely populated areas of Gardnerville. And finally, there's the challenge of maintaining a balance between reducing flood risk for those developments by allowing the river to access its natural floodplain, but also, not jeopardizing the infrastructure to the east, such as the road and those other structures on the far side of the floodplain.
So this project, like all of our other projects, has experienced a few additional difficulties due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Most of these are related to remote work and communications issues. COVID-19 has impacted all operations and project timelines, not just on this project, but on all of our projects. Our department has been making adaptations to deal with this. We've moved to primarily remote work. We have rotating times to access the office. And when people are in the office, there's a need to wear masks, distance, sanitize, and follow other procedural guidelines that we have, including temperature checks before entering the office. When people need to travel for field work, this is where we have had some of our more major impacts, which is the need to use multiple vehicles. And in some areas, it's very difficult to get multiple vehicles in or to park multiple vehicles. But most of these are really minor changes that we have adapted to really well within our department. The biggest issues that we're facing really are coordination with others, because there have been other agencies and businesses that have furloughed workers or have been harder to contact through remote work, especially if they don't have good phone forwarding systems or they don't have good internet at home, things like that. So a lot of it has been coordination problems more than problems that we've had within the tribe ourselves. We've encountered some issues with other organizations that are not allowing their staff to do in-person site work. And this is even when it's been outdoors with masks and distancing. This has been less of a problem with this project, but it is a problem that has occurred with some of our other outdoor projects, and so is worth mentioning. Coordination has been more difficult with COVID-19, but internally we've adopted really well to these precautions, and the working conditions in the department is functioning really well. It's more in the coordination with outside entities.
So to take a step back and talk about some of the overall benefits this project would have for the greater Carson River watershed, restoring this section of river would help improve sensitive riparian habitat and help with the ecosystem connectivity. So just kind of maintaining that concept of a riparian corridor, which is essential for many species. And another primary benefit is a significant reduction in the amount of sediment that is eroded from the area, which would help improve overall water quality downstream. And as we talked about in the hydrologic modeling slide, restoration of this river section would greatly increase the river's ability to reach its natural floodplain in those agricultural lands to the east. And this would have huge benefits for downstream communities by helping to reduce floodwaters. And finally, restoration of this area would just result in a far more functional river ecosystem that has benefits for both people and nature.
And beyond the impacts that this will have in a positive way for the entire watershed, there's impacts that are of special significance to the Washoe tribe. This area of the river is very close to the primary housing area, and it's very close to the tribal offices. So this is one of the areas that is most used by Washoe community members because it's the easiest to access this reach. So maintaining riparian health on tribal lands is really key in protecting cultural use areas for the communities. So these are areas where culturally significant plants are grown that people may come down and collect, ceremonies may take place, and these plants and other aspects of cultural use are going to be considered in the vegetation and the plan that is picked for restoration of this area. And then it's really important for the tribal members to carry on the longstanding stewardship traditions that restore the ecosystem health and improve water quality conditions. So with this project, we're going to be engaging tribal members from children through elders in this contemporary project, but bringing in that cultural aspect of healing the degraded land and resources and working as stewards of the land. So there will be planting days and other activities where the community can come together and work on this project as one. Thank you so much for your time and listening to our presentation.